What's up, guys? It's raining outside and I'm super in the mood to play some music. And I figured, since I'm on my guitar, I would do a quick video about the major scale. It's very important. Well, not really. It's cool to know the major scale because it'll allow you to compose music that is in key and it sounds pleasant to the ear. It'll also allow you to find out what key a song's in by basically going through the notes and finding what patterns it comes up to. So the major scale is based on steps. Okay, so from one fret to the next, it's a half step. From one fret, skip one to the next, that's a whole step, whole tone. I'm going to call them steps. They're usually called tones. So half, whole, okay? This is important because when I explain the major scale, I'm going to turn it into kind of like a formula. The formula is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Got to repeat that in your head multiple times. That's the first step. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Da, 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 da. I turn it into a beat. See? Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Da, 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 da. And what that means is I'm gonna start on A since it's right in the middle of the fretboard. So you got whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That's what that means. Okay? That's the major scale. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Learn it and figure it out on the guitar through the steps that I showed you. Half and whole. From this note to this note, it's a half step. From this note to this note, actually, from this note to this note is a half step. From here to here to the next string. From this string to the next string, it's a half step. From this string to this is a whole step. So half step, whole step from the previous string, which will make it much more easy for you to figure out, because when you go whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, you start on the first degree. So you don't count this as whole. So you don't go whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. You don't finish the scale. You start with the second note. So whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Right? Now, every single chord is built with the first note of that scale, the third note of that scale, and the fifth note of that scale, along with octaves of those same notes, but in a different octave. So, like this note and that note, they're the same. That right there is the root. So is these. So are these right here. Those are all roots. The third. So you got the first. You got the third. Right? You got two notes there. You got the fifth. Fifth. You put that in there along with the third. Then you put the octave down here, which is. Then you put the octave of the root down here. And then the octave of the fifth again, and you got yourself a major scale, right? That's how all chords are built, based on the major scale, right? This scale continues for eternity, so long as you can hear the octaves, because eventually the notes get so high they're not perceived by the human ear. But it goes da 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 forever and ever. And what that looks like is I'm just gonna keep it to where it's to that note on the first string. So let's do that again. Right, I went all the way through. But it continues. No matter where you are on the guitar or what note you start with, that's the formula. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, and you start over whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. If I were to put a note to each one of those steps, whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, it would keep going forever, right? I know I'm silly, man, but this is the way to understand this. Nobody explained this to me before. Everybody would talk about, yeah, I learned the major scale, but never explained to me what the use of it is and how chords are built based on the major scale, which I think is incredibly valuable, because this is the first degree of the major scale. This is the first degree chord based on the first note, which is the root, the third and the fifth, along with octaves from all those notes. Octave of a third, octave of a fifth, and octave of a root. Right? This is where it gets interesting. Each one of those steps builds a new mode. What you have to do to figure all that out is the first note is the root, the second note is the second degree, but that second degree, in order to start there and complete the scale, you start on the second degree and you add a note to complete it. So instead of going, you'll start on the second instead. You're now in the second degree, which is the second mode of the major scale, and it's called Dorian, right? I started on the second note and added a note to complete the scale. That's the Dorian mode. If you take the same formula, the root, the third, and the fifth, it'll create another note, or another chord, which is going to be a minor chord, because the third note in that mode is going to be a half step. And whenever you have a third that's a half step instead of a whole step, it turns it into a minor. So basically that would be the chord for it. This will be the first degree, this will be the second degree. Right? Now, every single degree on the major scale, by starting on that degree and adding notes to complete the scale, if you could recall, I was talking about how the scale continues on forever and ever. You start on a degree and you finish it by adding a note, or adding two notes or three notes, depending on what degree you start on. And from there, you build a chord based on the third, the fifth, and the root of that mode. Now, best place to begin is by learning each mode 3 notes per string. And what I mean by that is, instead of going like, see how I started with only 2 notes on the first string and then kept going? It is easier for the brain to remember if it's 3, 3, 2, 3, 3, 2, each one. So the first degree would be, the second degree would be, but instead of going from here to here and then the next chord, the next string, instead of doing that, this note is the same as this. So we're going to do 3 per string. That's the Dorian. Same as if I were to go from the second degree and continue on the scale as I normally did. So it's 3 notes per string. 3 and then 2. So you've just learned the first degree, which is Ionian. The second degree is Dorian, which is a minor chord. The third is a Phrygian. So instead of starting on the second, you start on the third note. But instead of playing it and then on the second string, start it here and continue it on 3 notes a string by figuring it out as it progresses through the notes. And the best way to figure this out is by taking the formula. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Dorian would be half, whole, 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 half, whole. Phrygian would be half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole. So it's like you basically start on that degree and you continue and you add to basically finish the sequence. This is Phrygian, right? And the next degree would be Lydian. So it would sound like this. And then you can literally continue it on forever. You know, all the way down. This is an acoustic guitar. I'm not used to it. Okay? And figure out all of the different patterns to each degree. 3 notes per string. And once you figure out the patterns, it makes it so much easier to understand what's going on in your fretboard. Because then by using octaves, you can understand what's going on throughout the rest of the guitar. Like this note and this note are octaves. So if you play 3 strings here, or 3 notes here, you can play them here as well. And if you understand what's going on with this note, which is the 5th degree, which we haven't gone there yet, but if you continue the scale, right? What's going on here is that you start it from the 5th, that's Mixolydian. Either way, the names of the modes is also important because they are all in order. So if you're in like Dorian, you know that the degree before that is Ionian, and the degree after that is Phrygian. So you'll always know where you are based on patterns. So no matter where you are on the guitar, you can take 6 notes. You take 6 notes in a sequence, and you understand a pattern. So each one of these modes has a unique 6 notes, 3 note per string pattern that'll make you understand what mode you're in. And once you know what mode you're in, then you know where all the other degrees and all the other modes are, depending on the key. So it all depends on that first note that I was talking about initially. Since we are in A, all the stuff we played falls back to A eventually. So let me know if that makes sense. And if you guys have any questions, always ask away in the comment section, and like and share the video if you'd like. I'm not really a YouTuber, but all right, you guys. All right, later.